Hello, my name is Katie and welcome to my video. Today I'm doing my wrap-up for the femmefantale readathon. The femmefantale readathon ran from September 27th to October 4th, and its focus was to read fantasy and sci-fi books by women authors. I had 4 books on my TBR for the readathon, and I didn't expect to get to all of them, and I didn't. I didn't manage to get to Heir by Jordan Fuego, which is odd because it was the one I was most looking forward to when I sat down to do my TBR. I ended up prioritizing things a little bit differently, and I will explain why once we get into this. The first book I finished for the readathon was The Mortal Word by Genevieve Cogman. I realized when I added this to my Goodreads as I began reading it, that I've been calling it the Mortal World this entire time, and it's not. It's the Mortal Word. And I'm not sure why I kept seeing word as world, but it is what it is. I figured it out. The main storyline in this revolves around the library being the mediator between a peace treaty between the dragons and the Fae. So we didn't actually get to see a whole lot of 1890s Paris in this. We mainly got to see the various hotels that they were staying in while these peace talks were going on. The story in this was great, as nearly every book in the series is. My problem, and the reason why I only gave it 4 stars, and why I don't think I've given a book in this series anything higher than 4 stars, is that I still have not been able to connect to Irene. And I don't know what that's about, because when I realized that a couple of the other characters that we follow in this series were going to get larger roles in this particular book, I was excited. I was like, oh yes, I get to see more of them. But I never feel that way about Irene, and I don't know why that is. But as far as plot goes, great. It was absolutely fantastic. The way it ended was a little bit surprising, actually. I hadn't really seen it coming, but it made total sense once they started putting the pieces together. So I'm happy I got to this one. The reason that I read this one first was because this was on my September TBR, and so I figured it would make sense if I read this one first so I could also knock it out in September. The next book I picked up was Godzillas, Jade, and Shadow by Silvia Moreno-Garcia. I wanted to read this book ever since I read Mexican Gothic over the summer, and I hadn't been intending to read this one second during the readathon. I had anticipated reading Heir next. But I saw a couple people on YouTube talking about this one again, and it got me really excited to read it. So I threw my plans out the window and I picked this one up. This story follows Cassiopeia, and she inadvertently releases a Mayan death god, and they go on a bit of an adventure together so he can win back his kingdom. I gave this book 4 stars as well. I really liked it a lot. I liked Cassiopeia as a main character. I liked her far more than the lead in Mexican Gothic. However, the world in Mexican Gothic I liked a lot more. I think it's because I like that dark, creepy style, whereas this was more like myth and fairy tale, which doesn't really tend to pull me in quite as much. There is a line that Cassiopeia says quite near the beginning, and it made me fall in love with her. I'll just read it to you. The death god says, "Then it's a good thing I rescued you." And she says, "You did not rescue me. I opened that chest. Besides, I wasn't a princess in a tower. I knew I'd get away one way or another, and I was not waiting for a god to liberate me. That would have been both silly and unlikely." I just love that our main character never saw herself as the maiden in distress. She always knew that she would find a way out of her situation under her own steam. And it just happened that the release of this death god helped her to achieve her goals. It was just coincidental, you know? And as soon as I read that, I was like, oh my god, I love your spunk. And that's part of the reason why I ended up feeling so much more attached to her than I did to Noemi, our main character in Mexican Gothic. So I really highly recommend this book. I loved it. I will definitely be picking up everything Silvia Moreno-Garcia writes. The final book I picked up was Blood Heir by Amelie Zhao. I decided to go with this one instead of Rare because this is one that my sister recommended to me, and I really wanted to be able to read something that she read and loved, and then we could talk about it. I think that's fun. So Blood Heir follows this girl, and we find out pretty early on that she was the princess in this country, but something happened, and now she's looking for this man because he committed the crime that she was accused of committing, and she needs to find him to clear her name. This book started out so strong. She arrives at this prison because for the last year she's been traveling and asking around and trying to find this man. And people keep telling her that this is the guy you need to see, but he's in prison. His name is Ransom Quicktongue. And she figures out where he is, and she contrives a way to get into the prison. And they meet. Oh man, I'm still laughing about it because as soon as I read this bit, I was just like, excuse me? So upon meeting, he ends up like conning her into getting the keys to the cell to unlock him and his chains. And then he locks her in the cell. And she's like, well, I thought we had a deal. And he was like, what, finding that man? I've never seen that man in my life. Goodbye. And he walks away. And he leaves her locked up. And I was like, what? But, like, to me that makes sense. That's what a con man would do. Like, he doesn't care about her. He doesn't care about cutting a deal with her. He cares about getting himself out of prison. So through a series of events, they end up traveling together. And what I appreciate is that they do not fall in love immediately. Like, through all their dealings with each other, we get to hear their inner monologue of, like, how they're gonna double-cross the person in the end. And I felt like that was much more realistic than a lot of books that have them immediately fall in love, and they're just pulled to this person, and they throw everything else away because they know they want to protect them. And that's not how it went in here, which I really, really liked, because it felt how, like how the situation would go down in the real world. My only issue with this is about halfway through the book, I felt like it got really slow, and that the characters started making really stupid decisions. Like Anna, our main female lead, she starts making these very dumb decisions, and we're supposed to perceive her as being naive, and I know this because Ransom keeps telling her she's naive, but it just comes across as stupid. Like, you supposedly been traveling alone on the streets searching out this man for a year. Like, why are you suddenly naive? Shouldn't you have gained a little bit of street smarts by now? And then equally, Ransom starts becoming an idiot. And I was like, you've been in prison for a year. You didn't think at any point that other people have been determining what they would do if you happened to get out? Like, did you really think you could just walk in and start calling in favors? And nobody would have a problem with that? So that really bothered me. It ended strong, though. But because of the way the middle went, I just had to give it 3 stars. I couldn't justify giving it anything higher. But I think I will continue with the series, because I did greatly enjoy that. And those are the books that I read for the femmefantale readathon. It was actually a really fun reading week for me. I got to dive back into fantasy, which I'd kind of been staying away from a little bit recently. And I think I'll definitely be participating if Jane from Jane Bookish Thoughts hosts this readathon again. So let me know in the comments below if you've read any of these books and if you agree or disagree with my assessment. Also, let me know if you would like to read any of these books. Or if you've had a very long day and you are tired and you want to let me know that you enjoyed the video, but you can't formulate a comment right now, just leave me like a smiley emoji or something. That could be cool. If you like my content, subscribe. Stick around. I'd love to see you in my comments. Thank you for watching. I hope to see you soon. Bye.